I've discovered what I think is a fatal flaw with the 3M sander. Or is it? About 2 years ago, I got this sander. September of 2022, I released this video and it did well. It had a lot of views, a lot of people bought the sander and they've been absolutely pleased and just as floored with it as I was. I love this sander from the day I got it. I thought it was one of the better sanders on the market, so butter smooth, and it sanded extremely well. But just a few months ago, I started seeing comments as well as getting emails and messages about this sander failing on people. And if that video that I made did well, that I said it was a good sander and now it's not working as well, I owe it to you to follow up and investigate. So I'm going to find out why some of these are failing. Oh, and we do have a response, an official response from 3M themselves about these issues that I'll share with you later in the video. So we're going to fix to put this sander through a test, just a normal sanding test, and see how hot it gets. I think you're going to be shocked at how hot this thing really does get. Full disclosure, 3M has sponsored a video of mine in the past. With that said, I wanted you to be aware, and I ain't gonna hold back, so probably won't get another sponsorship. All right, as stated, I've had this for 2 years. Never had a single issue with it until today when I started putting my theory to the test, and it failed. We're gonna get into that. But first, I asked my community on YouTube, as well as my Sawdust Startups private community, if they own this sander and if they've had any issues. When I put it on the YouTube tab, I just asked if they had the sander and just to email me, nothing more. When they emailed me, I responded with 3 questions. How long have you had the sander? Do you use a dust extractor with it? And have you had any issues? The overwhelming majority said they've used a dust extractor or shop vac and they had no issues. There were a few that did have issues with the sander, and we'll talk about those as well. So what I decided to do was start looking into this a few weeks ago. And if you go to 3M's own website, at the time of this filming, there's 40 reviews and the sander has a 1.6 rating out of 5. That started kind of raising some more suspicions there. So I started reading through these, and you can read through them as well on your own time. I won't bore you with them, but it seemed to have a similar issue. The sander would stop working after a few weeks or months. And I think I know why that is happening. And the reason I say some people is when I put that question out to my community that I just talked about, I started getting replies immediately, and I got probably over 25 or 30 replies to that response. The overwhelming majority had 0 issues with their sander and they were absolutely thrilled with it, but they all had one thing in common. And it wasn't how much they used the sander, because I got responses that some used the sander a whole bunch, and some used the sander light to medium, and then some used it just an hour or 2 a month. So it was a wide range of how much this sander was being used by various people. So my theory is the sander could be overheating and there's a safety switch in there that makes it shut off. But I don't think that was the whole story. So what I did was I come out here to the shop, I grabbed this sander and I laid it on his back because it has a paddle switch. And I let it run for hours, like 2 hours. And I kept checking the temperature with my Klein Tools thermal imager. I bought this just for keeping an eye on tool temperatures and things as I was testing them. There wasn't a whole lot of heat buildup doing it like this. Even after 2 hours, the temperature was around 102 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take. And I thought, it's not getting very hot. Most sanders will run at about 100 degrees in internal temperatures when you're sanding and things like that. Some a little hotter, some around that area. So I thought, well, there's a reason it's not getting hot. It's because there's no friction there. It's just literally the motor's just spinning. So I decided to change things up. So I started using it like you would a sander, but I left the dust extractor off because if you don't know, a dust extractor not only removes the dust from what you're sanding, it provides another important feature, which is airflow. It pulls air through all of these openings in the sander and down past the motor and then of course down through the dust extractor. That airflow removes heat. Heat is generated by the motor as well as friction of the pad on the wood. And friction is the enemy because friction will basically create a lot more heat than is normally there if it's just running, as proven by running it upside down. Now what surprised me by this is once I started using it like a sander, I started seeing the temperatures increase quite dramatically. After about 20 minutes, it was at about 134 degrees on the outside. And what I noticed very quickly was it was getting extremely hot around the base of the sander where your fingers go, so much so I couldn't hold on to it anymore. I literally had to pull my fingers back up here and use it closer to the top. Again, not using a dust extractor because every time I've ever used this sander up until this day, I was using a dust extractor, pulling that airflow. So this was getting really hot, and I thought, this is quite interesting. The more I used it, the hotter it got. It got to about 154 degrees on the outside. That's hot, y'all. You ain't taking a bath in 154 degree water. It is hot. Once it got so hot, I couldn't hold it on the outside. I wanted to know what's the internal temperature. I flipped it over, and you could see there's holes in the bottom of this thing. So I used the thermometer to shoot through those holes. And you can see here, outer edges were at 200 degrees. When you start shooting through those internal or more innermost holes, 234 degrees Fahrenheit on a sander on the internal temperature. That's hot. But I still wasn't having a failure. It just got hot. It was still working exactly like it should until today. Fast forward a few days, I let it set, didn't mess with it, come back out here today and it's like, I'm gonna see if it's gonna get hot again, because it's never done that on me, because I've always used a dust extractor. Put a fresh sanding pad on it and went to town. Guess what? Started getting hot, but this time it stopped working. This is a variable speed sander, 1 through 6 or something like that. It literally didn't stop all the way, it just went down to the lowest power setting and was just spinning. And the LEDs were flashing much like everyone else has described is happening to their sander, except mine didn't quit like they have explained theirs, or just stopping working. This one still worked, but at a very, very low power. And so, what'd I do? I unplugged it, let it sit for a little bit, let it cool off, back to work, and it done the same thing. And then I done it again, and it done the same thing. So 3 times in a row, after they got to a certain temperature, what I'm guessing with my measurements at about 210 degrees on the inside, maybe 215, it starts shutting off. And what I think happened with this sander is the other day when it got to 234 degrees, and then it cooled back down, the expansion contraction, something happened inside. Now, every time it gets to a certain temperature, it's just gonna shut off. At the end of page 9 and at the beginning of page 10 of the owner's manual, it does talk about overload protection for overheating as well as too much pressure. Like if you're just standing on it, giving too much pressure, then there's LEDs will flash as a warning. But the temperature overheat system states that it will go into a protective mode that will limit the speed and power output until normal temperature is reached, which is exactly what I thought it was doing. It was just overheating. So that's proof. She's overheating. I wanted to know, do all sanders get this hot? So, for science, I bought a brand new Festool ETS 150/5, same millimeter stroke as this one, very comparable sander, and did the same thing. 20 minutes, no dust extraction, just sanding with it. It did get warm, but not where your hand goes, down near the base, about 144 degrees on the outside. I did the same thing, shooting through the pad. I was getting readings at about 150 degrees, almost 100 degrees less than this one. So about 80 degrees less than this one, to be fair. Still significantly cooler, same sandpaper, 3M Xtract, same grit, no dust extraction, very different results. And I tested it over and over on the same Festool sander. I kept sanding. I sanded for almost 25 minutes just to see if I could get it hot, like really, really hot, like this one was getting, and I didn't see it. It was still significantly cooler than this 3M sander. Then I pulled out the handy dandy DeWalt sander. This is the best sander for under $100 in my opinion. How hot will it get? So I started sanding with it, waited about 20 minutes, started checking the temperature out here on the outer edges, about 100 degrees. About like the Festool was. Festool was a little warmer. Festool's also a bigger sander, got a bigger motor, all that good stuff. Right in the center of the pad, about 115 degrees, so not quite as hot as the other two, but this is again the smaller motor, but it still didn't get excessively hot, and this is a much smaller, less expensive sander. So why is the 3M overheating? What's hilarious, but not, is on 3M's own website, if you go on there, look under the details description of this 3M Xtract Sander. Under the highlights, it literally says, stays cool and comfortable while running. Not true, Brown-Eyed Sue, at least in this case, and at least in a lot of other cases, they're seeing this thing is getting extremely hot. Now, what did I say was the common denominator? For the most part, the ones that I think are failing or don't have dust extraction, or they're not pulling enough volume of air with their setup. Maybe a lower powered shop vac, a couple 3 horsepower shop vac is not gonna pull enough air volume versus a dust extractor or possibly a 6.5 horsepower shop vac that's pulling a lot of volume of air, moving that through here, cooling this thing off. There's also another very shocking thing about this sander that we'll discuss near the end. Another thing is this sander is touted as, on their own website, built tough for industrial use. It even says on the website for industrial occupational use only, not for consumer sale or use. A consumer would be a hobbyist, DIY, somebody in their garage, not in commercial business making money. Not sure why there's a stipulation there on this is not for consumer use, but it's obviously meant to be a robust and well-made machine that's supposed to last and be used for hours on end. Some of the failures that we've seen that I've gotten emails on have used this sander very little. However, what I will say is the people who have had issues with this that I talked to, they get an immediate replacement even if they're outside their warranty window. A couple of people have had more than one of these fail, and they will send you another one if you want to keep dealing with that. The front page of the internet, as they say, is Reddit. If you don't know what Reddit is, it's basically a place where people complain about a lot of stuff. So if you just search 3M Xtract Sander Reddit, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll drop these threads in there. One person says, PSA, avoid the 3M Xtract 6-inch orbital sander with the 3/16. He was very, very specific orbital diameter. Basically the same thing. What's happening was he was using the sander and it would shut off after very limited use. He even says he followed the instruction manual where it says you're supposed to blow the dust out, use it with a dust extractor, all that good stuff, and he's still having the same issues that we've been talking about here. He's also having trouble getting in touch with 3M support, and that's one of the questions I asked when I emailed my contacts at 3M. If somebody's having trouble, what's a good number or email or whatever to get in contact? I still haven't heard anything back. He did end up saying that 3M did finally repair his sander, so he has it repaired, and so that's good. And then two other people in that thread said they had the very same issue with the sander, is they got it and they failed. Now, what I don't know is, and I asked in the email for clarification, was this an early problem that a lot of these early sanders, maybe the first models, first runs, there was an issue, which can happen on first run tools. This was a very first electric sander from 3M, as they typically only had made pneumatic sanders up until this point. Was there maybe a manufacturing issue on the first run of them? It's possible. Maybe that's what happened, and now they've got it corrected. On the flip side, there's another Reddit thread. Somebody asked their opinion about it because they had seen the low reviews on Amazon. And if you look at this thread, a lot of people love this sander. They've had it for a couple of years, no issues. They use it a lot, they use it a little, and it's just been a great workhorse for them in their shop. What about the other issue that this potentially has? It's shocking. Like literally, it's shocking people. So, I had multiple comments and emails saying that this thing is giving them a shock. And a lot of people think that it's the static buildup, which will happen. It can happen. Static buildup can happen as the air moves through your hoses. But if you're rocking 3M dust extractor or any other high-end dust extractor, a lot of these have anti-static hoses. So that's not the buildup. After I had this for a few months, I mailed this sander to my friend in Texas. He used it for about 2 minutes, put it back in the box and mailed it back and said, I can't use it, it's shocking the fire out of me. I was like, what? It's never shocked me, never once. I have rubber floor mats in my shop though, literally standing on rubber. And he's on an epoxy floor. So I think there's some type of grounding issue with these sanders as well, although I can't prove it and have no other evidence other than what people are saying is it is shocking them. So out of those that I asked to email me about their sander and I asked those 3 questions, I had 36 responses. The overwhelming majority were positive. They love the sander, no issues at all. I did have 3 people report the shocking issue. There's like a static buildup or something going on. And then also I had 5 people, actually 4 people, report failure issues, but 1 person had 2 sanders fail. So basically 4 failures out of 38 responses. Not the greatest odds here, but also not something to panic about yet. I emailed my contacts at 3M and asked them 4 questions about this sander, which we'll get into. And I got a response from Nate Pellerin, who is the Director, Global Portfolio Leader. And I did get his permission before sharing this information. First and foremost, if you're having trouble with this sander, they highly recommend you take it back to the distributor where you purchased it from, especially if it's outside that warranty period, because they have some steps they have to go through. However, if you can't get a response or if you ordered online or don't know where to take this back to, you can use this email address. It's abrasivespowertools@mmm.com. Or you can call 1-800-362-3550. I thought it was important to get that information out there to you in case you're having issues getting a hold of anybody and you need to get yours repaired or fixed or exchanged, whatever they're gonna do. That was the first question. How do you get a hold of somebody? The second question I asked them was, are there any known issues with this sander, either current or previous, that are being addressed in units currently being sold? Because I wanted to know. If they got a problem, let us know. And the response was, we have seen a very low single-digit percentage of returns and repairs on this item globally, which is good news. We believe it to be at or below industry standards from return repair rate. However, as we are always looking to improve and innovate, you've hit the nail on the head with your third comment. And my comment was, were the heat-related failures? Of the failures we have seen, many are heat-related, we believe, through use without a dust collection system, but to help ensure additional durability, there is a newer design with a new fan design and additional venting that will support improved airflow and cooling. That's new. Nobody knows about that yet. As this is a rolling change, availability is dependent on the distributor, as they may or may not have placed a recent order with the new design. So we got a new design sander coming with improved airflow. That is good. I like them adapting and changing as they see a need for it. The third question was, I asked about the heat-related issue, and I told them about the testing you've seen here. It got to 234 degrees, all that stuff. And they said, see the answer above that I just read. So we asked and answered both of those. And the fourth question I asked was any other info I didn't ask about that is relevant to this issue, because I had brought up the static electricity issue being a problem for some people. So originally I thought they moved the heatsink inside of the sander to help with the static shock, but that's not the case. This is the response. For the static buildup issue, the team let me know that they ended up not having to move the heatsink, but rather found a method of coating the heatsink that helps insulate it from static discharge. Perspective, but actual dissipates the heat better. So the static discharge issue should be fixed with new models. If you are seeing that static buildup and it's shocking you, please contact your distributor, let them know about that, and maybe they can work out an exchange or a repair. Listen, I think it's awesome that they responded to me. At first, I didn't think they were going to respond because it took several days. But they did respond and answered every one of my questions fully and openly. I greatly appreciate that. They admitted that there might be some cooling issues, so they've changed the design. They saw the static buildup on the early models, and they fixed that with a coating of some sort. So they are responding and fixing these as they fail. So if you have one and you haven't experienced issues, I wouldn't be concerned. I wouldn't. I just use it like you normally would. If an issue arises, it appears that they're fixing those without any questions or anything like that. So that's a good thing. If you are experiencing those issues, please reach out to the contact information below. If you're considering buying this sander, should you buy it now? Well, I don't know. I'll tell you what I would do. If it was me, I would wait for the new design to come out and let that get tested a little bit in the real world and start getting that feedback from users before I invested money into it. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. That's what I would do, but you do whatever you feel is best. All right, here's the deal. It should be painfully obvious that 3M has not sponsored this video. I have worked with them in the past. I have no idea if it'll ever happen again in the future, and I really don't. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But I feel like I have a duty to let you know if there's a potential issue with a sander or a tool that I've reviewed previously and I gave it glowing review, and now there might be an issue, maybe there's not, who knows, but I felt like it should be out in the open. So if a future YouTuber who is heavily sponsored by 3M has a different experience, then maybe that's a great thing, and maybe they get the new design, or maybe they can test that out and figure out if it's going to be working for them or not. I don't know. I just felt like I owed it to you to let you know about this sander.